Warning, the following podcast will contain spoilers for a lot of the films we'll be discussing. Listener discretion is advised.
Howdy, folks! Viva Becker here, and welcome to our new show!
Theft! Stealing catchphrases.
You can't copyright howdy, folks.
Trademark Jamboree, that's it. We've got a lawsuit already, okay.
Howdy, folks is the most American thing I've ever heard.
It is, it really is. Well, the only reason I started that catchphrase was because I used to do that whole, hey guys, YouTube intro. And whenever I used to film at my parents' house, my mum would go, oh, James, that sounds really cheesy. And I was like, oh no, when your mum thinks something sounds cheesy, it's not cool. So I stopped it immediately and came up with a catchphrase on the spot. I don't know what's a very British greeting.
This is our land now.
That is, yeah. So, as Viva said, this is our brand new podcast show. It's called Film Chums, and unlike our other podcasts, there's not going to be any novelties or gimmicks, just simple, casual conversations about movies. Right, Viva, what are we going to be talking about in this episode?
Today, we are going to talk about some underrated movies that we think you should watch. We don't care if you don't think that they're not underrated. They're more underrated than different movies, so we want you to see it. We're upset that more people haven't seen it.
Upset, for one of mine, I would say upset is a strong word, because a part of me does kind of understand. Let's just say one of these films I'm going to be discussing is like 25% on Rotten Tomatoes. So what's the first film you want to highlight, let's say?
Alright, my first film, probably the least underrated film on my list, but one of my favorite movies of all time, and probably my favorite Disney movie of all time, Treasure Planet. Watch the film, you guys. It had really terrible advertising, but it's a freaking awesome movie. All of the characters have arcs. The art is visually appealing. The robot is not that irritating.
And he only appears towards the end as well, I've noticed.
He's only in the last part of the film, and he stops being irritating fairly quickly, so...
And there are worse Martin Short characters. Pebble and the Penguin.
There are worse Disney sidekick comedy characters. Freaking Olaf from Frozen.
I think I find Ben worse than Olaf, if I'm honest. But Treasure Planet, yeah. I've reviewed this film on my channel before, and I brought up John Silver for a video I did on the 2000s Disney villains. And yeah, I totally agree. The film deserves more love. And the thing is, I think the reason why Disney didn't hype it up as much is because for the directors, it was their passion project. It was very personal to them, and they were only allowed to do it once they did a couple of films for Disney, which were, I think it was Hercules and... what's the other one now? God damn, I forgot. But yeah, they had to do a bunch of films for Disney. And every time they kept pitching Treasure Planet, Disney were like, I don't know. So they had to kind of prove themselves that they could make successful work, so that Disney would be like, okay, you make this unique sci-fi film, you go and play with this. And I think maybe a part of them was like disgruntled about marketing it, maybe.
And also when it came out, it was around the time when 3D was getting trendy, and Disney was desperate to move over to 3D, so they were doing everything they could to prove to themselves that 2D wasn't saleable anymore. So I think that also led into the fact that they did the worst marketing campaign possible for the movie, because they didn't want to make 2D anymore. They wanted to make more money.
No. And I think Home on the Range was just the nail in the coffin that convinced them, okay, the problem's 2D, even though it wasn't. I'm kind of curious, because I've not actually read that many reviews of Treasure Planet. And I know some people don't like it, which is another reason why it's not gained enough traction. But the only complaint I've actually heard, besides Ben, was that it feels like a Saturday morning cartoon. And I don't know where that comes from. What do you think?
I have never seen a Saturday morning cartoon with that animation budget before. That's what I'm going to say about that.
It's got, yeah, definitely. There's so much to really praise about Treasure Planet, and it's, for example, the relationship between John Silver and Jim Hawkins, and the way that's animated and voiced is just beautiful.
I also appreciate that the way that the villain in this story is a reflection of the protagonist is a little bit more complicated than just your general, like, this is someone who just fights for the opposite thing. Throughout the movie, their goal is the same thing. The difference is more, this is the difference between having a dream and being obsessed. So I think that's cool to see.
Yes, totally. The relationship between Jim and John is some of the best character writing I've ever seen in a Disney film, and a lot of that is down to the juxtaposition between them both. But I also really admire the chemistry between the supporting characters of Amelia and Doppler, because not only do their characters redefine gender expectations, but as a couple, they both have moments of vulnerability and strength. The film doesn't make a joke out of their romance or force them into conventional roles.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think that they're spoilers for Treasure Planet. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. But I think their children at the end are kind of gross looking, but that's just that.
You just think children in general are gross.
Okay. Imagine alien half cat,
we'll put that
half
on a
dog
shirt.
Freaking children.
We'll put that on a shirt, okay? Viva thinks children are gross.
Okay. You can't do this to me.
I just have a picture of you with a disgusted face.
Do you want me to be popular or not? You've already gotten me to admit that I didn't like Olaf and Frozen. That's the end of my career right there.
No, I know a lot of people that don't like him. I've seen a lot of people admit that they dislike him. So no, it's not that taboo to say dislike of him, but it's far worse to say I hate children.
Okay. I see.
The thing is, most things that I love about Treasure Planet, if you want to know more, just watch my review of it. That's where I completely dissect all my feelings about it.
I'll just leave with this. I haven't read too many negative reviews of it. The only kind of negative thing that I've seen about it are people that are maybe not interested in watching it because they think that it's kind of a gimmicky Disney thing that came out at the end of their height, their end of their period of greatness. And so it's just like a desperate attempt to be cool. It's not that, you guys. Give it a chance. It's not a Disney... it's a Disney movie, but it's not like a Disney studio corporate creation. This was a passion project by a very talented pair of directors.
On a narrative level, Jim Hawkins being really into hip things makes sense. It makes complete sense. Because Jim is a character who feels disconnected from adult figures, and so he's become attached to anything that resembles his generation. That's where he feels comfortable. And that whole air surfing thing he does that people have criticised, that has a very vital part in the movie's finale. To simply sum up Treasure Planet as one of those films that tries too hard to be cool to teenagers really shows a surface level understanding of the Jim Hawkins character.
Okay, so the first underrated film I want to talk about, and the thing is, it's getting a bit more attention lately, but it's still it's still not getting the publicity it probably deserves. This is an anime film called Angel's Egg, and it's about a little girl and this mysterious man who are wandering through this dystopian apocalyptic setting. It doesn't really have a story per se, and it's more of an art piece than anything. And that might sound pretentious, but what I find fascinating about it is that it's very much an experience. And yes, what's that giggle for?
James whips out the artsy trash. We were talking about this literally seconds before we started recording.
I could bring out even artsier stuff, okay? I could get really pretentious. But no, this film, it's got some sincerity and honesty behind it, because while it is quite cryptic, there's something very melancholic and haunting about its atmosphere, and a lot of it is left to the audience to feel what they think of it and take what they want from it. And having seen so many films lately that are way too transparent with the audience and just over-explain so much and just go into way too much detail about a character's feelings or backstory by just spelling it out to the audience, it's a breath of fresh air. And I just found it quite relatable too, because I possibly might have depression. I have the symptoms, and when I was watching Angel's Egg, there's a lot of stuff that I did kind of connect with, because it just touches on this whole existential feeling of life feeling like a void and trying to find an identity and purpose in a world that you feel is dark and cold. That's kind of like what depression's like. So while it won't bring someone out of depression, it'll definitely validate them. And it's directed by Mamoru Oshii, who did Ghost in the Shell, another film people need to see as well. Not the live-action remake, the original anime classic.
Here's a question. How...
I knew there would be.
How do you feel coming out of that movie? Because I haven't seen it, but I have seen some reviews for it and clips and stuff in the art.
How I came out of it, it was... I will admit that I was left with questions, but I liked that I was left with questions, and I'm kind of eager to go back and watch it again and make more interpretations about it, because it's that kind of movie. But it's still quite slow, and I will admit I felt a bit tired after watching it, because the pacing is very, very slow, and it's just built on spending time with these two characters and this strange world.
So you would say that what happens in the movie is less specifically constructed to be consistent symbolism and is more just there to help give you a feeling then?
Pretty much, sort of, in a way, because Mamoru Oshii, even he didn't know what the film was about when he made it. So he didn't really have an intention behind it, but I kind of like that in a way, because it just becomes its own sort of thing, its own beast, and it can be anything, and I like that. I just find that interesting, because, and again, that's because I'm so used to all these films that are so straight to the point and leave you with nothing to really think about or interpret. I like ambiguity. I'm really getting to ambiguity lately.
Trash. No! You heard it here, folks. It's an undiscovered gem.
Yeah, it's confusing, but confusing in a way that I liked. And I know that's weird, but yeah, it just left me feeling like, I wonder what else I could find in that film. And I want to rewatch it, and I want to like spot little things and make my own interpretations.
I just have nothing to say because I haven't seen it.
Well, I I know it's going to be alienating to a lot of people. You need a lot of patience, and if you can't stomach a film that's like 100% coherent and follows a constructed story, this is not for you. It's kind of like got the same like art house vibe as like 2001: Space Odyssey, another film I know people are kind of divided on. So if you're not into symbolism and you want your film to be as transparent as possible, this isn't for you. But if you want to find something that has this gothic aesthetic and this melancholic poetry to it, and you kind of want to make your own mind up about the film, then yeah, it's going to be for you.
Okay. I said that I would wrap up these 3 into one because I came in with a lot more than James. So these are going to be 3 less popular Dreamworks films. So my 3 are Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, Prince of Egypt, and Road to El Dorado. All of those are really solid kids' adventure movies. All of those look very pretty. All of those movies I would recommend over some of the more popular Pixar or Disney kids films.
Right. So let's go through each of them. So first off, why do you feel as if Spirit is underrated? And obviously I agree. I totally agree. It's one of my top 5 favorite DreamWorks films. But why do you feel like it deserves way more appreciation?
I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it. I've heard people joking about the score. I think it's less of your standard kind of story that you would see. It follows a very standard kind of coming of age thing, but the horse is a horse.
The horse is a horse. What?
Shut the frick up! Shut the frick up! The horse is a lot.
The horse is a
He's
horse.
significantly older than a lot of the characters that you see going through these things, right? You know, he's not like a little baby pig or whatever. He's an adult freaking horse when he goes on the adventure.
We've got another t-shirt idea. A horse
Okay.
is a horse. Okay, continue. Tell me this film about a horse, this horse.
I'm not gonna say anything else. I just think it's cool to see that story, but amped up a little bit more. Older horse, way bigger stakes. Yeah, he almost freaking dies in the movie a number of times, which is way more hardcore than like your Charlotte's Web or like your yeah.
That's a great brag. More hardcore than Charlotte's Web.
Okay. If you're into horses, if your kid loves horses, there's a lot of horses in this movie. The horses have eyebrows, which is a little weird, but it helps with the story, so.
I never noticed that. What the hell? No,
eyebrows.
how did I not notice that?
Yeah, I spent a lot of hours in my childhood drawing those spirit horses, so the eyebrows are very important.
So yeah, I totally agree that Spirit deserves more attention. On the one hand, I can see why it's not had enough attention, because it's harder to market. Because they're the only things that they can on a commercial level, the only things they can really show off are, hey, we've got Matt Damon as the voice of this horse. Hey, we've got Brad Adams doing the songs. They've not got like a massive cast to brag about like later DreamWorks movies. So I can see why it's been hard for them to get it out there and get people interested. But on the other hand, it deserves way more attention. It needs to be given a chance, because it is certainly one of the more mature animal movies out there, animated animal films for kids, that is. And I this is something I don't know if we brought up yet, but there's like hardly any dialogue. The only talking you hear is either from humans or Matt Damon narrating the horse. But for the most part, a lot of the scenes are just very visual, and all about how these characters interact with each other through their like facial or hand gestures. I particularly love just watching the horses interact. Just even if it's a really mundane scene, just watching the way they try to let the other horse know how they feel, like warning them about some kind of danger or attempting to be romantic in one case.
Also, don't let the lack of dialogue scare you off from showing it to kids, because there's enough going on that they're going to be able to sit through it. I mean, I did. I don't know. Maybe your kid is less focused and doesn't love horses, but...
Well, kids have, like... Kids are all different. And each of them are going to have their own patience levels. And even if they have concentration problems, I feel like films like this are helpful in a way, because it helps them develop their patience skills.
Now I'm just imagining like a theater of kids with like the Clockwork Orange freaking eye-opening thing being forced to watch the film.
Watch the pretty horses. You will learn to be patient.
Yes, Road to El Dorado.
Go for it.
They are trying to do something with the movie. It is related to heritage of old school movies. But you don't really need to know those movies. You just need to know that all of the goofiness, all of the crazy, like, super not historically accurate stuff, that's there for a reason, and you can just accept that as a style. And if you do that and just relax and enjoy the movie, you can have a great time with it. I think it's kind of like Emperor's New Groove, where they're not really trying to tell a realistic historical tale, so you kind of have to let that go, and if you do, you can have a fun time with the style.
Yeah, the appeal of The Road to El Dorado is definitely the comedy and the buddy dynamic between Tulio and Miguel. That's the central thing about it. Everything else is a backdrop or something that works into the overall aesthetic, and I can't really complain. Like the film has its flaws, but the main thing is it's really, really funny, and you care about these two guys, and you want them to stay friends. I really love it, and it's one of those films that I watch when I want to be cheered up. Yeah,
and it's not just the two guys. They have a horse with them, and the horse has eyebrows too. And it's very...
We got a horse.
There's also a lead female character, and
Chell, who is also awesome.
She's pretty cool.
She's got this great confidence. She's got this fantastic level of confidence, and she could be just as clever and devious as Tulio and Miguel. And like she uses that to her advantage in many different ways.
And she's a little bit different than what you would expect from your standard kids movie female lead. She's a little bit less squeaky clean than a lot of those characters, so that's cool to see.
And the film has inspired a lot of memes. A lot of amazing memes.
Because there's very animated animation. I don't want to hear freaking anything from you about that, okay? I know I repeat myself a lot. I don't want to hear any freaking comments from you.
This is beautiful.
It's very big animation, okay? They have big expressions. It's fast, and it's really fun to watch. And it pairs up with the voiceover really well for pretty much all of the characters, I think.
Yeah, I used to kind of like, I will admit that I used to think, oh, it's not expressive enough, but looking back on it recently, I was like, yeah, no, it's the right level. It's not underdone and it's not overdone. It's the right style and tone you need, because the humor is both quite dry and a little silly at the same time. So it gets that balance right.
It's like slightly stretchier classic Disney characters, but not like Looney Tunes stretchy.
No, it finds that right level, I think, and I've only recently started to appreciate that.
Heck, there's a lot of things that I've learned to better appreciate about the film on further viewings, and I would even say that I was maybe a bit too harsh on the movie in my review. There are certain things I would probably take back.
And I have to say that the voice casting is just perfect. Absolute, just gold. Kenneth Branagh and Kevin Kline are so good as Julie and Miguel. So perfect as them. Like, I don't think you could recast that film. I really don't. Those two are just so ideal for their roles.
It's funny. It's a funny movie.
Very funny. It's consistently funny, too. Like, because the humor is the focus, that's where the strength comes from.
Yeah. Character-based humor, so it ages pretty well, too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the reason a lot of the jokes land is because it's centered on how well the audience knows these characters' personalities.
If you like animated gold, there is a lot of CG animated gold in the movie.
That is one thing I'm kind of like, about in terms of the Dreamworks hand-drawn animated films. The way they employ 3D into their work is a little,
A bit rough.
It's not. I've seen worse, but it's noticeable. You can notice it.
The best 3D is probably in Spirit, and Road to El Dorado has some pretty noticeable 3D, and Prince of Egypt has some eye-bleeding noticeable 3D.
Speaking of Prince of Egypt, so yeah, why do you think that's underrated?
Now, I'm not really sure how underrated the movie is, because I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, but I do hear people say that they remember watching it just in conversation, but I haven't seen a lot of reviews, so I don't know. It's definitely more underrated than Shrek, which it came out with. They were in production at the same time.
All right.
So, I don't know. And DreamWorks thought that Prince of Egypt was going to be their big release, and it ended up being Shrek.
Yeah.
So, also, this came out like a long time ago, so you have to kind of give the 3D a little bit of a pass. Like, they were working on it on those giant computers.
Yeah.
So there's only so much they could do. I've also heard
definitely.
people say that the character designs in Prince of Egypt are a little weird. I think they're okay. I like them. I think you might be thrown off by them a little bit because they look similar to the Disney characters, but the proportions are different. And I think that's why people...
it's a bit more angular and stylistic.
Say they look weird. But some of the sequences they have in there that are non-verbal storytelling are just really great. And the movie looks beautiful when it's not CG. And it's a cool story. I mean, what can I say? People love that story. It's the Moses story, so there's not much you can pick apart.
Yeah, it's more than that as well, though, because it's very much about... Well, it's about multiple things, but it's about brotherhood and the loyalty to said brotherhood, and as well as loyalty to a deity. And it combines that. It explores religious themes while also tapping into problematic family relationships.
Yeah, I would say that it explores it in that it's like a story about it. But they really put the focus in places that you don't usually hear about when you hear that story. So it definitely doesn't feel as heavy-handed as a lot of those religious kids' movies.
Yeah, the last thing I would call Prince of Egypt is preachy, because it makes you empathize with Moses' story and his situation, and It never tells you this is what you have to believe. It's all about, this is what is important to Moses. This is his life. This is his world. This is his responsibility. As long as you can resonate with that, we're cool. Like, there's no sense of indoctrination with.
Yeah, it's focused on telling a story. It's not focused on teaching a message.
And I really like how conflicted he is about his relationship to both God and the Hebrews and his family, and how you can see that on the one hand he's really wanting to save his people, but he doesn't want to sacrifice lives either, and you can see the torment he's going through and how stubborn his brother's being. It's frustrating and at the same time really sad.
Yeah, even like before he begins his journey into the desert, the family dynamics in those characters are there, and they're really strong in the animation, even when they don't say anything. The two brothers' mom is really characterized a lot. She doesn't say that much, but if you watch her in the background, you can see her reactions to things, and it gives her a character. And I
Exactly,
like that they focus on giving him a real family, so you can see why he's so tied to the Egyptians. It's not just like, oh, I'm rich and that's cool, I like being rich or whatever.
Well, that's what's very refreshing about the film, is that it looks at how, even if you get to a point where you realize, okay, my family is toxic, it's not easy to immediately just, well, okay, I'll abandon them, I'll just forget about them and move on. It's not like that. It is really not like that. Once you realize that there's something wrong with your family, whether they're doing something corrupt or they've got tendencies that are dangerous, you still have that attachment to them, and you can't just simply let it go.
Yeah. Also, Voldemort is in the movie.
Yeah. It's got, well, like, I know this is what you can apply to like all DreamWorks films, but yeah, Prince of Egypt has a really interesting voice cast. Really, quite star-studded.
Very famous. That might take you out of the movie a little bit because you can tell who the people are. But if you're not good at telling who the voices are, then no problem, because I think the performances are okay for the movie. So it's
not too distracting. Okay, so I guess it's my turn. So the next film I'm going to discuss, this is one of my favorite films ever.
VeggieTales.
When
VeggieTales?
What?
Okay.
No. So this is probably my favorite live action film ever made, and I bring this one up not just because of that. When people ask me, okay, what are your favorite films, and I bring this film up, they're like, I've never heard of that. So I feel a sense of responsibility to kind of thrust it into the zeitgeist, if you can say. It's called Son of Rambow. It's a British movie from director Garth Jennings, who would go on to do Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Sing. And it's about two little boys, Lee and William. Lee comes from this very neglectful and abusive family, while Will is with a family who's committed to a cult and has a very strict mum. And they both become friends. They make this sort of a fan sequel to First Blood called Son of Rambow. And the film is all about their friendship and making this film together. What I really love about Son of Rambow is how authentic it is. And this is coming from someone that grew up making films. My childhood was all about making movies. And because Garth Jennings based on his own childhood, that's what makes it so realistic. And it doesn't hold back. Not just in the sense of, like, this is why these two boys are the way they are, because of how either their family are too strict and overbearing, or they don't care at all. Two extremes of raising kids. But it's also not afraid to show things like kids smoking, put themselves in danger and stuff like that.
I have never seen the movie, so I don't have much to say.
I highly recommend it to people who enjoyed films like Edward and Bowfinger, stuff like that. If you really enjoy films about making films, you're gonna love Son of Rambow, but it's also this beautiful coming of age story that's heavily rooted in British culture, particularly in the 80s. And it's because it's very personal to the director as well. It comes from a special place, and I've watched it a million times. I never get tired of it. Once you do watch it, the main thing you'll come out with saying is Lee Carter, Lee Carter. Yeah, you'll get it when you see it.
It sounds awesome. I just wish that the filmmakers that were coming of age were also horses.
Put some horses in there. It's a bit like a Star Trek. It's a bit like a Star Wars edit. The director's going to go back and just put horses in the background.
Nice. I actually wanted to talk about a studio. I wanted to talk about Laika Studios over here in the U.S. in Oregon. They do the stop motion movies. They're like the stop motion studio besides Aardman. Check out pretty much any one of their films. They put a lot of devotion into all of their films. They are kind of niche, so like each one is different. It's going to appeal to a different kind of person, so you just find the one that is your favorite one. It's a small team, but they are definitely a team of artists working on them. So what's the most recent one that just came out from them?
The Missing Link.
Okay. So the one before that was Kubo and the Two Strings. I saw that in theaters a couple times, and the theater that I was in was empty. So this was opening week. And the stop motion is really small, but it's very detailed, and they use 3D pretty well, so those are some of the big movies I would recommend going to see in the theater if they show them again, or if you have a chance, because it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, the thing about Kubo and most Laika movies is that when it comes to the public's relationship with them, I've tend to notice that people are more fascinated with the art that goes into them than actually seeing them. I've seen more attention about look at how much ambition is behind this stop motion production, particularly on like news feeds and stuff like that. I see a lot of videos where it shows this is how they did that, which is what Laika is very proud of showing to people. Stop motion, and I say this as a stop motion animator myself. People need to stop seeing stop motion as a gimmick, because it's not, and give these films a chance. That they're more than just like, wow, how did they manage to take these practical, physical, tangible objects and get them to move. These are really tiny things. How did they do that? Oh, that's how they did that. Done. Now, check it out.
Yeah, these are carefully crafted stories. So,
yes.
You will enjoy your experience watching them if you want a good story.
Which would you say is your favorite Laika film?
I really like Coraline a lot. Story-wise, I really like the look of Kubo and the Two Strings. There's just some really big shots that they did for that look great. But if I was going story only, I would go Coraline probably.
For me, I love Coraline on both a story level and a visual aesthetic. It's obviously it's the substance behind it that makes it so powerful. But there's this great style to it being both kind of cute and creepy that I particularly admire, which is so hard to do. It's really difficult to make a horror film for kids that's not too scary, and has that right level of like safety, but also a little danger.
Yeah, I mean, it might be quite a bit for delicate children at the end, but I think most kids could probably get through it.
After you've watched Roald Dahl's The Witches, any other film is going to be tame for kids. The Witches is like the peak of children's horror.
If you've read the book The Witches, they neutered the end of The Witches, though. They neutered it.
Oh, they did, yeah, but like all their terrifying puppetry and makeup and stuff like that. I feel like if your kid can handle The Witches, they can handle anything from that Laika.
Actually, you know, when I was watching The Witches when I was a kid, I was kind of grossed out, but I wasn't really like that scared because the makeup was so obviously makeup. With Coraline, everything is like, it looks like it's in the same world, so you can imagine more that this is real, whereas Witches is live action, so.
Well, that's the thing. I would definitely say that I have to say animation is more capable of being scary than live action. I will admit that. Particularly with like 80s anime has this really strange frame rate to it, and art design is just like there. So yeah, I honestly, and that's not just because I love animation. I objectively will admit that animation is far more capable of being frightening because it's so detached from reality, but also has that connection to recognizable and familiar things.
I do want to say the one area of Laika where they fall down and they just don't put very much attention to detail is voice casting and voiceover. Awful. I don't.
Right. Why would you say that?
It just doesn't seem like they think about it that much. They get whoever famous person they can get on it. And I don't like a lot of the voice performances that they end up getting for their characters. I don't think they get the best people. And I don't necessarily feel like you need to do the kind of thing where you cast based on ethnicity. But I did notice for Kubo and the Two Strings that they tried to make a big deal about having some Japanese actors on the cast, but if you look at the cast list, all of the main actors are not Japanese. You don't have to do that, but if you're going to make a big deal out of it, make sure that you are going all the way and you're not just doing, yes. We want like freaking Voldemort is in that one too, and he's like the main guy, the main evil guy, and not Japanese, so okay. The female lead, not Japanese, so
I think it comes mainly from a lack of faith on Laika's part, or perhaps a higher force than them, I'm not sure, but like perhaps because a part of them thinks, okay, we're doing a more old-fashioned take on a more old-fashioned animation technique. It's less likely people are going to come to our screenings, so we need to put famous people in there.
Yes.
I think that's possibly their mindset.
I agree. Like, going into the theater opening week, having it be empty, I'm realistic about the fact that they need famous, like, the famous people are the reason that people are going to see the movie. But that doesn't mean I can't criticize it.
No, obviously, yeah. It's definitely a problem that Laika need to have more faith in people seeing their work and let their projects stand for themselves.
Yeah, because they're already putting a lot of faith into their weird movie making style. They need to draw people in somewhere. But I still think that they could do a better job of casting because even with the famous people they get, I don't think that their voice performances are very good or fitting to the characters. I did not like Matthew McConaughey as the Beetle in Kubo, and I really think the character could have been much better if they had gotten a voice actor that could have made the character actually funny.
Objectively, though, would you say there's if you were to say like one voice actor out of any Laika film, who would you say is the best? Like the one exception we feel like actually no, they did a pretty good job. Who would you objectively say?
D. Bradley Baker in Box Trolls, doing the sounds of the box trolls, because that's cool.
And Steve Bloom, I think Steve Bloom did some as well for Box Trolls.
There's some little kids, that sound okay, like Coraline and the little girl, I forget her name, that was in Box Trolls. Oh, Elle Fanning. Yeah, they sound like little girls, so okay, they put some energy in their characters, so I think those are fitting, and they do the job, and they tell the story of the character, and they're charming. So I would say I just haven't been like really blown away by any voice actor that I've heard where I'm like, wow, that is perfect for that character. They really bring something to the character that I didn't expect to hear. It's not like in Road to El Dorado, like what we were talking about, where they make the character. So I just think, yeah, they could do better.
The last underrated film I'm going to suggest is the movie that was completely scorched by critics, but recently my computer broke and my phone has been in the repair shop. So I mainly ended up watching a bunch of bargain bin movies. And to me, this was possibly one of the more enjoyable films that I watched from the bargain bin.
Okay.
It's called King Ralph, starring John Goodman. It's in terms of story, it's nothing remarkable, but it was one of the first times they tried to do it. So it's about this Vegas lounge singer who ends up finding out that he is next in line for the throne of England, and he has to fly off to Britain and take on the responsibility. And he mainly does this because he has financial problems. A lot of critics didn't like it because it's mainly about the whole funny fat guy kind of thing. And yes, the narrative would later be completely repeated again and again for so many movies. The whole unconventional character ends up getting the crown and they have to learn how to do it. But again, yeah, this is the first time they tried to do that kind of thing. And I feel as if, yes, the film isn't great, but there are little things here and there that I kind of like. I'll say right away, and this is something critics did bring up as well. John Goodman is the movie. He is absolutely brilliant because he's John Goodman. He's just being himself. He's got a lot of natural charisma, a lot of energy, and I feel like he brings a lot of charm to this character. They could have gone with a really unlikable, way too sleazy kind of guy who's too obnoxious to put up with the whole joke of like, oh, it's a Vegas lounge singer having to look after a country kind of thing. But no, he's just a nice average guy, and you kind of sympathize with him because he's had to resort to becoming king in order to look after himself financially, but his staff is constantly pressuring him to do certain things and follow certain traditions, and he's having to sacrifice himself and his identity. The thing is, a lot of foreigners are convinced that most English people worship our monarchy. A lot of us don't, and the film also addresses very, very British ideals, values, and societal problems, particularly with like working class struggles and things like that. So yeah, there were things that I quite liked about it. Oh, and it also criticizes the media's relationship with royalty. These are things that are still completely relevant, even right now with the prince and princess deciding to denounce their monarchy. That's really controversial in England right now. And watching King Ralph, you kind of go like, oh yeah, that's quite relevant. That's so there is something timeless about it. And it is kind of making a point, even though it's this goofy, silly comedy. So yeah, I don't think it deserved to be completely annihilated and destroyed critically. I feel like there's something there, and it has a really great British supporting cast, like all these veterans that are iconic and national treasures, like Peter O'Toole, John Hurt, Richard Griffiths. They add a lot of class to the film and give it some gravitas. Have you heard of King Ralph?
No. Would you say that it's accessible to someone who's not British?
Yes, absolutely, and that's mainly because of John Goodman. While a lot of it is very much rooted in British politics, you don't need to be British to understand it. You really don't. Like you get it's so generalized, you kind of get the idea anyway. But the Britishness is still a part of the heart of it. Yeah. I don't think it's that alienating. I really don't. Once you grasp onto the charm of John Goodman, you're just there for the ride. Saying that, though, I will admit that British people are going to appreciate King Ralph more, and that's because a lot of details, plot points, satirical jabs, and themes are eerily similar to a lot of real-life events regarding the royal family's relationship with the public. So yeah, don't have your expectations too high, because again, this was a film that I found in a bargain bin. But at the same time, I do think that it deserves a chance. There's stuff here that has substance and merit. I came into King Ralph thinking it was going to be mindless fluff, but it is trying to say some very important things about the monarchy, media, politics, and the class system of England. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast. This is a very new structure for us, and we're happy to like taking any kind of feedback and see where we can take the show. I'm personally up for anything. I'm up for talking about anything whatsoever and just having fun. Yeah.
Yeah, discussion topics, recommendations.
Yeah, throw something. If there's something in particular you want us to do, let us know.
Do you want to see the Treasure Planet episode? Because I'll do it. James will do it. We would love to talk about Treasure Planet more.
I've already done 2 videos already on it.
Yeah, well, I haven't done one, so I can just talk.
Right, okay, yeah, so cheerio, folks.
Bye.